to the garage, guys. So today we are going to pick up where we left off on the last video, and that is going to be number one. We're going to look into fixing this header, and maybe you can see how bad it is on there. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, a little bit. So going to do some weld repair on the header flange and see if we can belt sand it flat again and try to get these exhaust leaks taken care of, because the exhaust leaks are bad enough that it is undoubtedly causing problems with keeping the turbine wound up and making boost and all that neat stuff, and we need boost. So that's project number one. Project number two is we're going to pressure test the wastegates and make sure that there are no air leaks, and apparently we have an air leak as well. So those two things combined really hinder the boost as far as how fast it can get from low boost to high boost, or wherever you're launching at to wherever you're trying to make it go to, and once it gets there, to keep it there. So without further ado, let us get started on that and see if we can find some problems. Okay, so the first order of business is, let's see if you can see that. I don't even think I can see it. There it is. So right there, maybe kind of hard to tell, but there's a lip that's kind of hiding in that shadow right there, and that whole shiny spot right there needs to come down towards the port to cover up that bolt hole a little better. The exhaust looks like it's getting down, it's getting into the bolt hole, and then that gives it free roam to blow the silicone out everywhere it goes, or everywhere around the port, I should say, or at least a big portion of it, and of course that's bad. And then it also looks like we're gonna have to do a little bit of welding on these tops right here, because this thing is just simply not sitting flat on the head. So I'm gonna dress this up with a wire brush, and then we'll get another look at it and kind of see where we need to do the welding on it. Okay, so I skipped over all the header repair because that's kind of boring stuff, but I'm going to show you the finished product. So there's the finished product right there, and you can kind of see what I did. I just welded up around the port and then dressed it flat on the belt sander. I actually have to hit it just a little bit again because, as you can see, there's still some blue dye right there. So the blue dye, all I did was I put it around all the ports, and I kept dressing it down on the belt until the blue is gone, and it's touching all the way across, more or less is what that means. I've laid a straight edge on there, and that's actually really, really close, like to the point where it's almost not even worth messing with. And then I took some all thread and I cut 8 little 1/2-inch long pieces like that. Come on, folks. There you go. Look at that camera working good for a change. And cut a little bitty slot in it and beveled one end of it. So we're going to screw these in to the bolt holes that are closest to the exhaust port. You won't be able to see it on camera, but if you actually look down in the exhaust port on these heads, the lower portion of the threads of that bolt hole actually barely break into the exhaust port, and part of me thinks that the exhaust is actually going in through those threads and blowing the silicone out from the bottom, and then the other part of that is that it's probably helping it from the inside edge of the exhaust port out towards the bolt hole. So it's probably a combination of things. Anyways, I'm gonna screw these little plugs in there and see if that kind of helps things out a little bit. And of course the flat header flange will definitely help quite a bit. So let's get it put together and see what we have. All right, some of you guys had mentioned not seeing heads set up like this before. This is actually the number one primary, the one that actually leaks the worst. And you can see that inside bolt hole. Let me see if I can point at it here. Right there, that guy. This inside bolt hole, that area is actually even broke out of there a little bit. Maybe burned away, who knows. So that is where the leaks are starting on this particular cylinder. And hopefully these trusty little plugs will take care of that. So let's get them put in and see what it looks like now. All right, we'll get the last of these little homemade set screw things put in. And I made them like this with a slot instead of just getting a set screw, because A, the hardware store didn't have set screws, and B, there's a little more surface area right there instead of a big hole in it that the Allen wrench is going to go through. So maybe that'll help, maybe it won't, I don't know. But I think we're ready to put the header on it now. Okay guys, so we got all of the header stuff dressed up and fixed up and put on the car, and I'm here to tell you it was not fun. If you've ever worked with, welded on, modified stainless, it moves around a lot when you weld on it and cut it and put it back together and all that stuff. So when we put the header back on the car, and it was like this before too, the V-band where the header connects to the crossover pipe was just impossible to get lined up. And this particular V-band assembly actually has grooves in it, so it has to line up perfect in order for it to seal. And that took about an hour and a half to get that thing lined up right. So got that on there, got it fired up, no leaks, everything sounds good. I changed to my other downpipe, which actually points out of the hood now. And you can see it right there. Anyways, no particular reason other than I had to take the downpipe that was on there off of there in order to get the V-band lined up. So to save time, I just put this one on there, no big deal. But it makes for some cool pictures and cool video that you are about to see coming up, which we're going to cut to right now. Okay guys, so we made a grand total of 4 passes yesterday, and the car performed flawlessly, absolutely perfect. The tune-up is, the air-fuel ratio is just, I mean, spot on now going down the track. Really, really good, and I'm really happy with that considering all the fuel problems we had initially. So that is officially behind us, and it has been for the past couple of outings. But The header that I welded up, I had dressed it down on the belt sander really good and checked it before I put it on the car, and it was fine. I checked it with a straight edge. The next morning I come out and let it cool down and got ready to put it on the car. I checked it with a straight edge and that thing was warped again. Just cooling down is enough to relax it to the point where it had a little bit of dip in the center two tubes. Probably in the neighborhood of a 32nd of an inch. But to be honest with you, I don't think that's the problem. I think that the tension that I mentioned earlier in the video between the collector and where it bolts to the crossover, I think it's enough tension where it's actually rocking the header out like this, and it's actually causing it to get an exhaust leak. So I may investigate that a little further, see if I can cut down on that tension or the misalignment between the collector and the crossover pipe. But long story short, it blew the silicone out again. So I have to take it off no matter what and look into that. So whatever, you know, such is life. If that's the worst of the problems, then who cares? One thing you may have noticed in the video that it still lays down just a little bit when I click high gear. And that is coming from the fact that it's not holding the boost that I'm commanding at the top of the track. So the car leaves on about 13, almost 14 pounds of boost, and it sees about 20. And then after it clicks into high gear, the boost starts to taper off a little bit throughout the run, and it sees as low as 15 pounds. I think now what is happening, the wastegate leaks are fixed, the air leaks, which I mentioned earlier, I just didn't show you guys. There was 5 or 6 very small leaks, probably even inconsequential. So those are fixed nonetheless. I pressure tested everything from the wastegate past the solenoids and the airline back to the back of the car. That's good. But what I think is happening now, the air pressure is actually staying on top of the gate, which it wasn't before. The air pressure is staying there all the way through the run, like clockwork, just like it should. But the boost isn't. So what's happening apparently is the wastegates are getting blown open from back pressure, which is kind of weird because the back pressure, assuming that my sensors are correct, is barely 1-to-1, which is very low. Now I am running low air pressure on top of the gate, and I am running very light wastegate springs, so those two things are probably part of it. So we're going to do some experimenting on that scenario when we go to the track this coming Saturday for a track rental. So that is it. We did get a new best again. So it's officially 0.2 faster than that time I mentioned a couple of videos ago. The 60 foot did improve from 1:15.8 to a 1:15.1. Okay guys, that is the end of the video. We made huge success at the track once again. Things are starting to turn around. I think some of the things we're going to have to address in the future is the bias of the weight to the front of the car. The car's only about 52% over the nose, and we're running the shocks and struts full tight, so we have nowhere to go. I think what we're going to have to do is find some weight, move some weight, shift some weight, or put some weight in the front of the car. Usually we experiment with Velcro leg weights, 10, 20, 40 pounds over the front. We'll kind of move them around, see how that does, see if we get some of our shock usage back, and kind of go from there. And you probably noticed it earlier in the video, but driving back down the return road from the end of the track, the car is super bumpy because the shocks are full tight, shocks and struts. So anyways, that's it. That's the end of the video, guys. Thank you very much for stopping by and checking it out. I certainly appreciate it. And especially for those OGs who are sticking around and following this thing from start to finish. It was looking pretty bad at first, but we are getting it figured out. So, again, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.